Bloodthirsty, murderous, homicidal, savage, brutal, cutthroat, other synonyms for bloodthirsty. The Lannisters have had plenty of those type of people.
A lion doesn't concern himself with the opinions of the sheep.
But this video, I want to talk about 5 of the most bloodthirsty Lannisters that we're never going to meet in the books or the show. Thankfully. Let's start with everyone's favorite homicidal monster, Lann the Clever. Let's be honest, it's hard to beat a guy who basically made a house extinct so he could take their shit. Lann was around during the Age of Heroes and has many origin stories, including posing as one of Gareth Greenhand's kids and taking off with part of his true son's inheritance. But his true origins isn't that important. What is important is that one day he decided he really liked the Casterly's home, Casterly Rock. There are a few stories on how he did this, pitting the family members against each other, rigging various snares and deadfalls in their home to maim and murder them, fucking all their women, including using rape. But by far my favorite is the one that says old Lann smuggled a pride of lions inside, which killed and ate the Lord of Casterly Rock and his sons, and while the women grieved, he took them to Pound Town. And go on to become the founding father of House Lannister. What makes this worse is this guy was proud of what he did. He didn't annihilate a family and then go about his business. He wanted others to know what he did. As Tywin Lannister pointed out,
By keeping the Casterly name on the castle, Lann reminded the world of the price of getting in his way.
that is some fucked up, brutal mind games right there. Regardless of which story is correct, this guy definitely didn't shy away from violence and basically tormented an entire house just so he could steal their shit. That's not only bloodthirsty, but just not nice. Number 2, Lilias Lannister's nephew. Who doesn't actually have a full name, sorry. To understand what led to Lilias' nephew becoming super homicidal, let's jump back a bit to when the Whores ruled the Iron Islands and not the Greyjoys. Whores spelled Hoares. I know how it sounds, it's not spelled that way. So the Lannisters and the Ironborn never really got along. The Iron Islands don't have a lot of resources, meaning they had to get them from elsewhere. Since the Westerlands were so close to the Iron Islands, they dealt with a lot of Ironborn raids, which resulted in Westerland men being killed or taken for thralls, their resources plundered, and their women and young girls being taken for salt wives and just other shitty things. Despite the animosity between the Westerlands and the Iron Islands, the Lannisters did try to make peace with the Iron Islands through marriage and wards. Harmund Hoare II spent his youth as a ward of the Lannisters at Casterly Rock. When Harmund became the king of the Iron Islands, the King of the Rock married his daughter Lilias Lannister to him, hoping that would bring some peace or perhaps even lead to lasting peace. Because of Ironborn luck, this did not end well with Lilias and Harmund the Hoare's son, Harmund the Hoare III, fucking shit up. When he became king, because he was raised in the faith of the Seven, he thought, hey, I'll get rid of some of the Ironborn customs, and that did not make the Ironborn happy. Some of these customs he got rid of were salt wives, reaving, and thralls. The Ironborn instantly rebelled. Well, almost instantly. Close to instantly. In this rebellion, he was overthrown and his younger brother, Hagon Hoare, took his place on the throne and restored all their old traditions. Both Harmund and Lady Lilia were mutilated for their crimes of daring to eradicate Ironborn traditions. Lady Lannister's lips, ears, eyelids, and tongue were all removed before she was sent back to the Westerlands. Now, as you can imagine, that did not sit well with the Lannisters. Lilias' nephew currently sat as King of the Rock, and he was super pissed about what they did to his aunt. The war that resulted ended in 10,000 dead. A third of that were the Ironborn. Finally, the Westermen landed on Great Wick, destroyed Hagon's hosts in battle, caught Hagon, and then mutilated and killed him in the 7th year of fighting. And they mutilated him in the same way he did to Lilia. Despite that, the war between the Ironborn and Westermen would go on for 5 more years before finally making a peace agreement. When the Westermen left the Iron Islands, they left them impoverished and in terrible shape, which is just an understatement to what they did. All the fighting had drained the Ironborn resources, and the winter that followed their war was called the Famine War. 3 times as many Ironborn died of starvation than died in the war between the 2 regions. Now, I understand why this guy did what he did, and yeah, the Ironborn had it coming, but there's a thing called taking it too far. You took it too fucking far. When you basically just keep kicking someone while they're down for 5+ years and just keep raping them over and over again, you're a tiny bit bloodthirsty. Number 3, King Tyrion II, the Tormentor. If your nickname is the Tormentor, most likely you did some fucked up shit. I mean, we all do fucked up things, but he probably did more fucked up things? Tyrion II was a strong king that could wield a battle axe in battle like none other. However, he was called the Tormentor for a reason. He loved to torture people. It is believed he could not desire a woman and sleep with her until he first made her bleed. And not in the pop your cherry sort of way, though that isn't a guaranteed bleeding anyways. No, it was in a, I'm gonna cut you, bitch, sort of way. Now, how much he made these women bleed is a guess. I'm hoping it's more of a paper cut and just not a whole fucking stabbing. Like, maybe a woman would get a paper cut and he'd just get a full-on raging boner. I don't know. I'm just trying to look on the brighter side of this sick fuck. Regardless, I guess you could say his kink was blood and it made him thirsty. You know, because in our modern culture, we call a man thirsty when he's horny, and he got horny from making women bleed, so he was blood thirsty. It checks out. Number 4, Gerald killed his niece, the Golden. Gerald the Golden was actually a great leader. As were most of the people on this list, they just had violent tendencies, which I guess back then you kinda had to have. In 210 AC, the Grey Lion died, and his son, Tybalt, became the new Lord of Casterly Rock, and Tybalt's younger brother, Gerald, became his advisor. Everything was going great for Lord Tybalt until someone put their hand in the poison jar. He ruled for 2 years before dying under suspicious circumstances, especially suspicious since he was young and healthy before just randomly dying. When he passed, he left behind a 3-year-old daughter as an heir. Given her young, tender age, Tybalt's brother Gerald served as a regent for the girl. Which is just so kind of him to help his 3-year-old niece learn to rule the Westerlands. He didn't want lordship for himself, but to see his niece just grow into a beautiful young woman to rule the land. Sadly, and so unexpectedly, tragedy struck again, and the poor 3-year-old randomly died. As nieces of power-hungry uncles tend to do. This meant the Westerlands, the Rock, and all the wealth and power of House Lannister now passed to Lord Gerald. I'm sure he was shocked at the development. But hey, even though he probably killed his brother and little niece, the guy was still a great warden of the West. He was clever, shrewd, able, and fair-minded. Yeah, people gossip that he killed his niece and brother, but under his rule for 31 years, the Westerlands and House Lannister increased immensely in wealth, power, and trade. He was such a great ruler, he became known as Gerald the Golden. But given the time and belief that the gods will always punish you for kinslaying, some bad things happened in his life that made people sure he was actually responsible for the death of his family members. So I'm not sure how you get more bloodthirsty than killing your brother and your toddler niece for land and a title. Number 5, another Gerald, Gerald the Great. King Gerald Lannister, also known as Gerald the Great, earned his nickname by raiding the Iron Islands during his time as King of the Rock. Which, from number 1, you know they sorta had it coming, and the Iron Islands and Westerlands had a back-and-forth hate party. But what he did about it was both smart and incredibly bloodthirsty. So King Gerald raided the Iron Islands and took 100 Ironborn hostages before returning home. These hostages were to keep the Ironborn off his back. So again, this was actually a smart, calculated move by Gerald. With his 100 Ironborn hostages in the Westerlands under lock and key, he vowed to hang one every time the Iron Men dared raid his shores. Either the Ironborn thought he was bluffing, they didn't care about the hostages, or they just can't help putting their hands in cookie jars that just don't fucking belong to them. They still decided to raid the Lannister shores. This guy didn't bluff either. Every time an Ironborn raided, he would hang one of his prisoners. It resulted in him hanging 20 men. Now I can see the responses telling poor old defenseless Rorys that she's wrong, that it wasn't bloodthirsty, but simply a smart move. It can be both. You can make a smart move and be bloodthirsty at the same time, even if the Ironborn totally had it coming, which they did. So those are 5: bloodthirsty, savage, cutthroat, homicidal, other words. Lannisters were never going to meet in the show or books. Well, I mean, besides the World of Ice and Fire. Which one of these Lannisters on this list was your favorite? Let me know in the comment section down below. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, and come back for more videos.